We are live. You're watching the Merged Marketing Podcast. You're listening to the Merged Marketing Podcast. I'm Jason Hunt, and today I'm here with Jackie LeBeau, who is a registered psychotherapist, certified clinical trauma specialist, owner of Evolve Counselling Services, and consultant for Halton's Women Center, where she organizes and leads their group of therapy programs. Their clinics work in all areas of mental health, including anxiety, depression, anger management, addiction, eating disorders, LGBTQ community, and they work to heal past or current traumas to aid in mental health support and healing. Jackie, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I think this is such an important topic that we're discussing today, which is working remotely and the impact on mental health. I mean, many people, including myself, have found myself in ruts here and there just by working at home day in and day out without that face-to-face interaction. So we're going to dive into some ways to get around that, some ways to deal with it. And Jackie is probably the best person to speak to about this topic. Jackie, maybe you can give our audience a bit of a background on how you got into psychotherapy and a bit about your journey. Start wherever you wish.
Yeah, for sure. So I was initially working in law actually for 10 years, and working in family law, you're kind of on the other side of helping families break things apart. And after 10 years, I just thought I wanted to be on the flip side and helping try to keep families together instead and keeping kids in the home. And, you know, going through my own divorce, it helped me kind of see that emotional side that divorce has. And I wanted to be there to be able to support specifically women, but everybody through their divorce, which led me more into trauma and addiction work. So it's very interesting.
How long have you been a therapist for?
Just over 3 years now.
Just over 3 years. And can tell me a bit about the clientele that you work with, the patients that you work with.
So we work with a wide range of children, individuals, adults, couples. We work with entire families if need be. We cover everything from, like you said, anxiety, depression, addiction. We're basically a full house of whatever is needed. We're there for our clients. So our motto is always, we're never going to wait list a client, and we won't turn anyone away. So we work within budgets even to make sure that everybody receives the care that they need.
That's amazing. Now let's move into the new normal, what a lot of people are calling it. I know it's a word that's maybe a bit of a fad and kind of overused, but it is kind of the new normal. I mean, even businesses, our own, for example, we don't foresee a day where we'll be coming to the office 5 days a week again.
Right.
It's probably going to be a situation where we won't be coming to the office any more than 2 days a week. Now, there are pros from a business standpoint, pros and cons. And, you know, some of those pros, obviously saving money is obviously a big pro. Also, getting less distractions in the office as well, which is something that can be a con by working in office all the time with your teams. But maybe talk about some of those. Some of the negatives in terms of the impact on mental health.
So working remotely from home, both for children and for adults, it's been a huge impact this year on every age range. So we've seen an escalation in mental health issues, not only in one specific area, but, you know, we have our kids who I'm working now with 3-year-olds who have anxiety, and without parents really knowing how to treat it or work with that child, we're seeing an increase of OCD behaviors now in very young children. And then we're moving into adolescents who their entire curriculum was changed. So on top of that, they have had added stress of school. Now they're being pulled into no socializing, and now you're at home. And let's face it, there's no teenager that actually wants to hang out with their parents all day, every day. So we've removed everything that they know and just like replace it with being stuck in a home with parents that they don't really want to be around. And then senior citizens who have quite literally not left their home in a year, even to go for a walk around the block. So we've seen an escalation of dementia. And unfortunately, some of those clients were moved into treatment homes because the isolation was just so severe for them. And working with the family, the only option was to make sure they were in a treatment facility that would give them the the full hourly coverage and monitoring and all the things that they need that the family wasn't able to provide. But like you said, specifically focusing on one of the largest groups that was actually impacted were the individuals that were working remotely from home. And I wanted to talk specifically about women. I know that there are men who, you know, were at home doing their job, raising kids as well, but I've seen a huge number of women who basically reached their breaking point, because what has happened is the lines have become blurred between work life and home life, right? So employers are now kind of taking advantage of, I can access my employee whenever I want. So the hours are no longer 40 hours a week. They've become like 60 to 70, or for some of my clients, it was 24/7, where they were on call all the time. Outside of that, we're now living in these two mindsets of, I have to run this job, that's my full-time career, while at the same time as being a teacher for my kids. So that remote work isn't just about doing your actual job. It became two jobs in one, and just having the double mindset became so overwhelming for people. So the impact has turned into almost like a second wave now that we're going to see moving out of the pandemic into the mental health crisis of anxiety, depression, and sadly addiction.
Let's go back to talk a little bit about that dynamic of teaching, you know, doing the homeschooling as well as trying to get a job done, because I mean, kids weren't able to socialize as much in 2020 and 2021 with their friends, and that resulted in parents probably relying very heavily on iPads and electronics to take up the time to keep their kids occupied so they can actually get some work done. And then not even to think, well, even just going down that path, I mean, I'm sure there's a bit of guilt involved from the parents as well when they know they have to get some work done, and yet they're throwing an iPad at their kids to keep them busy and occupied. What are some things that you're seeing, and what are some remedies for this?
So I'm seeing, yes, 100%. There's that mom guilt or dad guilt of, I'm not able to be with my child. So it was almost like they're coming in to work on strategies to deal with, I feel like I'm neglecting my children right now. But unfortunately, what's the other option for them? There isn't that other option. So because you have to keep the roof over the kids at the same time, right? And then we're seeing the kids who, unfortunately, yes, myself included, we've had to use electronics as part of our parenting plan to help. But what is that actually doing for both? It's, again, creating such extreme levels of isolation. Over the last year, we've basically conditioned, or what's called neurological adaptation, we've conditioned ourselves to lose our social skills. So for children and for the parents of those children, it's unfortunately increased that inability to, now we're transitioning into having to be social and we've lost how. Or for young children, they weren't even properly taught because they were pulled out of the school system.
Yeah. So, in terms of, you know, parents that are struggling with this, is there something that you're seeing as maybe some advice to a business owner on how they can deal with a situation like this? What's the best way to deal with employees that have kids at home that they need to take care of? Is it just a better understanding, having flexible hours? What would be a best practice for a business owner to put in place in their business?
I think my rule is always person, place, or thing. If it's causing you to feel something negative, your boundaries are too loose or possibly too rigid. So I think in this case, it's not necessarily about trying to be too flexible. It's about providing structure and sticking to, you're hired to work 9 to 5. That rule still applies whether you're working remotely now, to give parents the time to separate what's become that blurred line, to separate it into, this is my home, this is my work. Even though the office is still in the house, I'm going to shut my phone off. I'm going to shut my email off at 6 p.m. because I know I have to transition myself into being a husband, a wife, a parent, whatever it is, right? A caregiver in some essence. But if we don't have that, I call them transition times, and I talk to so many clients about this, it's very important to focus on your transition time. So the two biggest points are when you transition from home life into work life, and then at the end of your day, when you go back from work life into your home life. I can't drag my home life into my work life and expect that clients are going to want to see me if I'm venting about a fight with my partner, right? No different than I can't bring my work stress home. When we don't have an actual 30-minute commute now and the work life is still within the home, we still have to create that illusion of these are my working hours and these are my home hours, and still have the 2 transition periods where we're taking 10 to 15 minutes to I tell clients, regulate yourself for those 10 minutes before you leave your office. So you're going into your home life, being on as a mom and as a partner, or a dad and as a partner as well, versus I'm still on as Jackie the therapist, and now I'm a wife and a mom, and it's becoming too blurred, right? So I think as an employer, I need to create that structured line for all of my associates to say, this is where you're off now. I'm not going to reach out. I'm not going to demand hours that are past that 5 p.m. time.
I love that. I think it's such a good point, Jackie. Because those lines do become blurred between work and home, especially when you're at home on a consistent basis. And then you got to flip that switch. Okay, I'm in family mode now. I'm in dad mode. And it's really tough sometimes to flip that switch when you have something sitting there in your inbox that needs to be dealt with. And yet you got to pick yourself up and leave it to go and spend time with family and be there, not be sitting there physically, but mentally being there. And I think that is a big challenge. So, let's talk a bit about the importance of disconnecting from work, disconnecting from the job. And I mean, just my personal remedy the way I deal with my work-life balance is I put the phone in a totally separate room. The phone never comes to bed with me. It's always downstairs, because if I hear a notification or an alert, I've got to pick up the phone. I just can't stop thinking about it. On Friday at 5 p.m., I'm really not doing anything work-related until Monday. But when I'm at work, I am totally there 110%. So hey, Jackie, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. Lost you there for a second. So I was just saying, can you maybe talk a little bit about the importance of disconnecting?
And I want to go into specifically to business owners with this one, because as a business owner, we need to run the show. We need to keep marketing going. We need to make sure our clients are coming in and we're getting the jobs for the business to flourish, right? But for those of us who also have a family, it becomes very difficult to want to shut off and disconnect. So I have so many business owners that come to see me, and unfortunately, the work-life balance has become too imbalanced, and their family's now suffering from it, because it's easy, like you said, I'll just take this last email or this last text, I'll take this phone call, and then that becomes like the whole evening is gone. So I talk to them about structured time, and you're putting it into your phone, no different than a medical appointment. You're scheduling your time. This is my family time. During that time, I'm not going to do work. No different than I'm not going to bring my kids into a session. It's not fair to bring my clients into their time that they have with their mom, or adult time with my partner, right? So if you're not able to do it naturally, or it doesn't come in that organic form of it's flowing where at 5 o'clock I can put the phone down, shut my emails off. If you're not able to do it, then you have to schedule it in as an appointment for my family. And I know that sounds awful to say, but when we see it in our phone that, okay, I've blocked out 4 hours, visually what the mind does is it now sees it as, okay, check-in. You're doing an automatic check-in that I'm going to spend this time with my family instead.
That's amazing. And to be completely honest, I have totally deployed that for myself. I've been doing that for probably about 2 years now, where I'm a slave to my Google Calendar. It's like and my wife has a link to my Google Calendar. She has her own unique link that she can book me in anytime, any day, anytime. If I have an appointment I have to go to, it's in my calendar, and
Right.
nobody else can book that time slot. And for anybody out there listening, if you're not leveraging Google Calendar and a platform like Calendly to get people to book into your calendar, I suggest you do it. It's been great for me. But even having that in place, like Jackie was mentioning, it does get a little difficult when you do have to leave that email there, but you do have to say no, or else as an entrepreneur, most entrepreneurs can work 24/7.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to flip that switch.
Yeah. And I find too that for me, when you're in a practice of helping people as well, you have those emergency situations. Sometimes it's like, okay, do I choose this or do I choose my family when this person is really struggling? And there's times where it's like all hours of the night, I'm still working. But it's so important to give back to yourself as well as your family, because what good will I be to helping others if I've depleted myself so much that now I'm into burnout? And once you're in burnout, that takes, for the few days that you're working extra, your burnout might take months to recover from. So if we don't give back to ourselves or our family, and I always call it the airplane rule. If you don't put your mask on first, you're not going to be able to help anybody anyway. So sometimes we have to do what I call juggling with glass balls and plastic balls. And I talk to my clients about this. As long as you're keeping your glass balls in the air, sometimes it's okay to let the plastic ones fall. They're not going to necessarily break. We can recover from those a lot easier than the glass ones, which shatter. But we have to be okay to drop some of them sometimes.
As long as you're dropping the plastic balls.
Yeah, as long as they're the plastic ones, they bounce back, they're resilient, you can fix it and clean up the mess a lot easier than glass, right? So focus on making that list of what are my glass balls, children, your spouse, extended family, maybe time to travel, your own medical needs, things like that, mental health, coming to see your therapist are going to be your glass balls. Well, some of the day-to-day stuff, maybe I didn't get to vacuuming today. Okay, let's let that one fall today. We can pick that up in a week, right? We have to do that balance, and it's constant juggling, which is why I call it juggling, because you forget sometimes that I need to be able to let go as much as I am so engaged with things.
I love it. That's amazing. I'm definitely going to remember that one for sure, because I think sometimes it can be difficult to distinguish the glass balls from the plastic balls, right? Mm-hmm. So it's important to have it almost written down, because naturally what's going to take that first priority, or what you would consider a glass ball, would be the thing that's causing the most stress on your mind, which might not necessarily be a glass ball.
Right.
Yeah. Very cool. So, I mean, it's remote work can cause feelings of loneliness. And I think that's a big thing. What are some ways employees can cope with and overcome those feelings of loneliness, aside from getting a dog, which has been a big trend in 2020, 2021, right?
Yes, but all of my vet friends are so happy about it, because the vet visits are
100
insane right now. So when talking about loneliness, I always like to separate out the difference between loneliness and alone, right? I can be in a room with 10 people and still feel lonely, or I can be on my own and not feel like I can be alone, but not feel lonely at all. So what is that thing that's telling us what's the difference between those two? And it all comes back to human connection, right? So after a year of isolating, we've unfortunately created this fear-based response over that, what we actually need, which is human connection, right? So for those who, especially the clients who are single, this year has been extremely difficult, because it's created a lot of loneliness because of the lack of the connection that they had with friends, right? Now, people were bubbling with certain groups and they were left out. And you saw a lot of breakdown just over that. So going back 100% to connection in groups, connection at the gym, connection with family again. We have to get back to learning how to connect in order to get through this final wave that's impacting our mental health. So joining groups, joining sporting things, even if it has to be online, looking at ways to connect with humans is going to relieve some of that loneliness for sure.
I just started playing rugby again this year. It's been a while since I've played rugby, and we had our first practice there last week, and it was such an amazing feeling afterwards. It just kind of hit me at once. It was just like, oh my God, like that was so much fun. I haven't done that in a year and a half. Played rugby with about 40 different people and just meeting new people. That's the key too, right? People outside of your bubble.
Yeah. Did you have anxiety going into the game though?
Going there initially, just kind of communicating with new people, you mean, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that was a challenge, but fortunately when you can play a sport, it makes it very easy to communicate, right? And it's forceful communication. And then from there, it's just developing new relationships, which is, it's like a muscle, right? Like starting new relationships with people is a muscle. And when that muscle hasn't been worked in a while, it gets tricky to get back into the swing of things with meeting new people. So I think that's one big thing that a lot of people are overlooking is when we start going to live events again and meeting people, it might be a little awkward at first, right?
Yes, it's going to be uncomfortable, but it's no different than we've conditioned ourselves to be social our whole lives, right? Now for 1 year, which is a very long time, we've conditioned ourselves to not be social. And it's no different than coming off of drugs, actually. So human interaction and doing drugs actually have on an MRI similar effects when we fall in love, right? When we come out of a relationship and there's a breakdown of a relationship, we go through similar withdrawals as coming off of drugs. So right now, we're kind of all in this withdrawal phase, I call it, where we have to now condition ourselves and have a new established pattern of behavior where we're conditioning ourselves to be social again. And part of that is pushing through some of that discomfort and maybe baby stepping yourself into, don't go to like a 50-person party, start small and build it up with 5 people to 10 and build it up from there, right? But I think a lot of people are going to be going through that discomfort. And if we can all kind of have patience and understanding as well as that compassion to say, we're all still in this together.
That's awesome. Jackie, this has been an amazing conversation today, and one I definitely think our audience would need. A lot of our episodes are very tactical in digital marketing, but this is definitely a different type of episode, but still brings a ton of value to our entrepreneur and business owner community. So I appreciate you coming and joining us. Is there a best way? What's the best way our audience can get in touch with you if they have any questions?
They can email me directly at info@evolvetherapy.ca or contact us over the phone, 519-830-9901.
Awesome. Jackie, I've got some rapid fire questions for you, if that's okay with you. All right. You ready?
Yes, but no.
Okay. All right. What's your favorite magazine?
I don't really read magazines anymore. Probably my guilty pleasure would be like the gossip ones.
I thought you were going to say Psychology Today.
No,
okay.
I don't actually read Psychology Today.
Who's your biggest inspiration?
My biggest inspiration is actually both of my children, just to like their personalities, living in the moment, learning to see the world through the child's eye. They're the best people at being mindful and in the moment. And I think it's amazing if we can learn to see the world through their eyes, we'd all be so much happier.
Love it. I love it. Where's the next travel destination outside of Canada?
We are going to Mexico in December.
Oh, there you go. Boom. Double vaxxed?
By then, yes.
Yeah, there you go. Awesome. What's your favorite social media platform?
Probably Instagram.
If you could choose anyone to represent your business, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Like a celebrity, you mean?
Anybody. We end every episode of our podcast with this question. So, who is it going to be?
To represent my business, I feel like I would pick somebody like Jennifer Aniston because she's like the girl next door. People trust her. And she has this calming personality that I think would fit really well with mental health.
I love it. And we have not had Jennifer Aniston yet. So we've had a lot of Oprah, no Jennifer Aniston.
Not Oprah.
Awesome. Jackie, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Bye, Jay.
And there you go, Jackie LeBeau, a great episode where we really dove into, at least for me, understanding the employee's mindset as a business owner during a pandemic, and understanding the need for a work-life balance and a healthy work-life balance, because I think a lot of people, myself included, have overestimated the power of working from home and some of the cons that can go along with that. And, it really has been an oversight. So understanding that and dealing with it in an appropriate way and respecting that work-life balance are a couple of the big takeaways from that episode. Again, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for watching the Merged Marketing Podcast. Be sure to go over and subscribe on your go-to podcast platform and leave us a review. That would be awesome. Thanks again, everybody. Don't settle for good. Be great.